Hey, it's Jim Marshall, the Cottage Country Insider Podcast. We haven't had an episode for a while because we've all been busy because it's the busy selling season for us, and it's the busy home inspections season as well with our special guests, Roly and Sue Wight from Clearview Home Inspections. And we are just talking before we started recording here. You guys are a little busier than you were 2 years ago, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
So what happened with home inspections during COVID in a nutshell? Just people just stopped doing them, or what? What happened?
Well, in the very beginning, it was incredibly busy. 2021 was really busy, and then everybody got into a panic mode of having to have, the buildings that they were looking for, and it stopped. It came right down. We got a lot of private deals. We did a lot of wet inspections. We did a lot of septic inspections, but we weren't getting the package and we weren't getting them all together. So it became very sparse.
I think the big issue was the fact that the conditions, that there were competing offers, and a lot of places, from what we understand, went for high above the asking price, and so people didn't put any conditions, including the condition of home inspection, on them.
Yeah, and that's what we saw too, because I don't think we had any home inspection conditions basically through that time period. We went for a time period where it's like, forgot what you guys kind of looked like, which was, but literally, it was just such a crazy market. So what's happening, we're finding now, and I'm sure it's the reason you're busy, is the market's picked up again, but people aren't doing silly things like going unconditional on these multi-million-dollar places anymore, or anything, and they're putting home inspection conditions in. I think that's a good thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it lessens buyers' remorse if they can have a
And you know what we're seeing now? We're seeing some of those people that bought back in those crazy days, the height of COVID, and they realize that buying a cottage might not be the best idea. So we're seeing some of them come back up on the market. And, there's a few places, and you guys are in Carling Township. There's a few people that have bought cottages in Carling and McDougall, I think with the intent of doing short-term rentals, and they got squashed by the township because they bought from whoever their buddy real estate agent Mississauga is, came up here, and then they get the letter from Carling and say you can't do that. So we've seen that happen a lot.
We hear a lot of that, but we don't have the finer details. We're not privy to a lot of that information. The out-of-town real estate agents that were coming up that really didn't know the area, didn't have any idea of those rules, regulations. They were leaning on us to get that information, and that's not our place. We don't know all that. We're there for the building, and we're there for the conditions, to be met through home inspection, not do the job of the realtor.
Yeah, well. We're still dealing with it now. We've got a lot of out of town, and they're fine. A lot of them that they come in, there's no issue. We just did one where a realtor is buying actually for himself and his wife. They brought somebody in from out of town. I saw the home inspection; it was fine. I think most of them home inspectors, as long as they know, they're familiar with septic beds and all that. I always think you're going to be better with having a local person, because you guys live up here and you know the local issues. So what kind of local issues do you commonly see? I don't know. This is cottage country. So, we got lots of different things, but, homes, cottages, what are kind of like the 4 or 5 top things you see that are kind of issues with places you do inspections on?
Well, septic systems are a big one. Like people need the information on septic systems, and a lot of city people don't even know what a septic system is. So you're starting your explanation very basic. And water filtration is another one. And like inlet pumps versus jet pumps that draw the water, that type of thing. Those are 2 big issues. And drainage is another big issue for a lot of cottage buildings that you don't often run into in cities. Like their cottages are built on the back of hills. So you've got all this drainage coming down. They need to know how to manage it and what to do with it.
One of the things that gets overlooked quite often is is the trees, just simply the trees on the property. A lot of them, can be dangerous. And, with a bit of a lean on, that big old pine is going to be coming down, at some point. It's not ready yet, but it's going to be very expensive when it does. And it's dangerous. I mean, that's one thing that tends to get overlooked. And you don't want your brother to tree down.
What about things, and we don't see this with cottages as much. How much do you see? But you certainly see the homes in Parry Sound vermiculite insulation in attics and things like that. You guys still seeing a lot of that?
We do see probably maybe 10% of the houses that we do in town are vermiculite, or we're worried about. It's a house of concern. We've got pretty good at being able to identify the different sizes of vermiculite insulation and whether or not we think that it's positive, but you can't guess. It has to be tested. And different areas are, I don't want to say street names or anything like that, but certain street names, when we're on that street, it's more likely to be positive than negative. So we do still see quite a bit. We've had 3 in the last month, I guess, with vermiculite.
We have seen vermiculite in attics on islands as well.
Oh, you really? I've never seen that before. Really?
We've had a couple that we've had to take vermiculite samples in from islands.
Wow, that's a new one for me. What about things like we get people to ask us about things like radon gas? Do you guys? I think we might have done one once on a place up on Manitowoc, but do you get that a lot, or do you see any issues with that up here?
Very seldom. We have what we call a 7-day radon test. We go in, we set up a radon detection, and then we come back 7 days later, and it collects an average from those 7 days. As long as the average is low, then it links on its numbers and specifications on the machine that tells us whether it's acceptable or not. But that's a minimum test you can do. I guess there's other tests you can mail in from Home Depot and different kits that you can buy and get some kind of answers, but I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's issue more areas of the US. We have had a couple people ask. I think we did one like that with you on a place in Manitowoc some time ago.
We did one in the court. Yes, that would have been about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, probably before, 18 or 19 or so. It's not something we generally get asked for. Any other things like that, as far as you guys are seeing, docks, things like that sometimes are issues, or?
We don't inspect docks as a rule. Roly will look at it and give a general opinion, but because we can't dive down and see, like if they're anchored properly or things like that, we normally say we don't inspect. We'll look at them and go over some maintenance tips and the general condition. But that's just more of a courtesy rather than an actual part of our inspection.
We don't.
But that'd be a good idea for Roly going forward. You can charge extra $50. Roly puts on the Speedo and down he goes and checks it out. I don't know.
That might scare some buyers off.
That could. It'd be a lot of fun. What about? Are you seeing pre-inspections at all? Something we've talked about with some of our clients, getting it pre-inspected and kind of being very with our listings, being very transparent with it and sharing those things. And if there are outstanding issues, trying to take care of them before, we go to market.
It happens a little bit, not very often. In some cases, when the home needs a lot of repairs, somebody will do that just to be transparent, to say, here's everything that the inspectors have picked out. We're well aware of the condition of it, and we've taken that into consideration with their pricing. So they kind of present it like that. Other times, people are very, very worried that something is going to pop up, like vermiculite or a bad water samples, or they're worried about that, so they don't want the surprise. They're stressing over the home inspection. They rather get it over.
Okay. What about you're seeing a lot of issues, and we see this with cottages that we show where people have obviously done their own work, and it's not really up to par. Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, so
You laugh because when we look at some of these places, you look, it's like, what the hell were they thinking? Like honestly, like it's just, and
yeah,
I think it's more with more with cottages and homes, but we see with homes as well.
yeah, we see it with pretty much everything. There's the homeowner effect in just about every building to some degree, but some are way worse than others. It's usually electrical that people
Yeah.
mess with that they shouldn't, and poor workmanship can be fixed, but once you run all that wire through your walls, it's becomes a big job to
Well, the
really
other
do.
thing with cottages too is they start out with just say maybe the grandparents, and then the family gets the cottage, so they need more room. So they're putting on additions, additions on additions, and renovations. And the first two renovations were done not too badly, but the third and fourth are really bad, and that affects the first renovations that have been done with movement and pulling on the building and that kind of stuff. So often you get generations of repairs, all done differently, all done with different materials, all indicative of the era that they were done in. So yeah, sometimes it's quite a challenge to follow it all.
We've done some pretty unique old buildings that have had it. You can see this is old building materials from 1950. This is building materials from 1980. And it goes, that's kind of neat. But
It's a bit like being an archaeologist, and you're uncovering layers of the past when you're doing these things.
Yeah.
Wallpapers like that.
Yeah, 6-7 layers of wallpaper. Yeah.
We've done a couple on almost on Cascade Street, and they use newspaper to insulate. So, I'm leafing through the newspaper because it's in pretty good condition. And it was pre-World War II, so you were getting headlines of Hitler was moving his tanks, and it was kind of neat. So they'll use just about anything, and that is kind of cool. That's a neat part of this job.
What's the weird, like you go up to the attics and that, and Sue doesn't. She's sensible, but Roly does. What's the weirdest thing you've seen in somebody's attic?
There's bottles of liquor, kind of kids hiding the bottles of liquor in the attic. We've seen dead animals. Occasionally we'll see a old shotgun, or we see bats from time to time. That's fine.
Yeah, that's another thing that we had. One house we did that had a huge bat infestation in the attic, and they had it was horrible. It was a big older farmhouse, and they had to have somebody come in and remove it all. I believe it was quite costly.
Yeah.
So we watch for that kind of stuff. But the funny thing is, some of the older buildings downtown, like some of their stores now, you go down into the basements there, and sometimes you see some different old stuff in there that's been stored from years, from everything that has occupied the building. Sometimes there's little pieces of history from whoever occupied the building at a certain time. So that's cool.
Yeah, the bats are interesting because we've seen it sometimes in attics, especially where there was one place in Parry Sound, I remember years ago that I think there was some litigation on it because it had a massive bat infection where it cost 6 figures to remediate that. And that's one of the things, like, and you get in the old homes, you get in the old cottages too. Some of these old board and batten cottages.
So I think the last incident we had with bats was only a few bats, but the homeowner had left the window. The attic had windows, like one on each end, like almost like vents. You could open them up in the screens, but they left the window open, and they left it open probably for a very long time, and just enough to let the bats come and go. And I think that's what caused it. So that's carelessness on their behalf. But,
Costly carelessness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's unique around here because there's stuff up here like bedrock, of course, which is normal up here that you wouldn't see in southern Ontario. So, we get questions, how do you build a septic on bedrock? It's like you just put a big mantle and you just build it on top. I do that with my job. You do that constantly with home inspections. That people just don't realize how things kind of work up here. It's different than southern Ontario because everything's built on rock up here, basically.
If you can have rock for a footing, that's a solid footing.
Yeah, we got the odd person that's worried about the rock shifting or whatever. It's like, no, rock's been like that for over 1 billion years. You're probably good for your life, next 30 years in the cottage. What kind of maintenance issues do you see that people? You talked about trees at the beginning of this, and that's obviously we see that all over the place. Trees, branches growing at the eaves trough, things like that. But what are some of the other maintenance issues that people aren't doing that when you come in, you look at it's like, man, they should have done this a long time ago.
Water treatment. You can have the best water treatment system in the world, but if you don't maintain it, you might as well drink swamp water. It's fermenting in the filter. You lose water pressure. That's a huge one. It's just having all the nice equipment there to look at, but not looking after. Even hot water tanks should be drained. They say once a year, but realistically, the average person once every 2 or 3 years. You should drain the hot water tank just to get all the hard water, everything out of the bottom of it. The water heaters now, actually, the way they're designed, they'll heat the water to 140 degrees, and then they have an added cold water valve that turns on, that brings the water back down to 120 degrees, and that's done purposely to kill the bacteria. But the older tanks are not designed that way. You either have to have the water turned up to 140 degrees all the time, which is relatively dangerous, or you're running the risk of bacteria and whatnot. But that is definitely a huge one. People don't change their water filters nearly enough. Valves. The foot valve that's out in the lake, if you're out swimming, it doesn't hurt to dive down and clean the end of that off too, because it may have tipped over. It might be sitting right in the mud where big old dead fish beside it. But you don't know. So.
That is a big thing is in below grade living spaces, people don't properly ventilate the areas and you get moisture condensation build up and you get damage as a result of that. You need to, in your below grade areas, use dehumidifiers, open your windows, let the air flow. People often cram more areas full of storage that limits airflow, and then you get mold buildup and moisture damage.
Yeah. You spend all weekend out in the boat. The kids come in, throw their life jackets in the closet. They're not completely dry. You see that all the time.
One of the things that people don't understand, and a bit of a story, there was a fire because of one, is HRVs and not cleaning them. And they're a great thing. They work. I think they work extremely well. We have, we don't have ceiling fans in our bathrooms in this house. So we have HRV. So in the shower in the wintertime, get the HRV, you do it out. But they need to be cleaned. Like they should be looked at like every 6 months.
Yeah, we had this conversation yesterday with a buyer, and he says, "How often do you have to clean them?" Everything is individual to the house. You look at some of the HRV vents, and the intake vent on the outside of the house is in a garden. There's bees, there's hornets, there's bugs, there's spiders, there's ants, and it's all getting sucked into that unit. There's filters and everything. It's not like they're being dispensed to the house, but you open them up and it's horrible. And then other ones, it's all about where that vent is. And other ones are perfectly clean. And just with your normal dust, and so it's all relevant to where those vents are located too.
And mice can get in them too in cottage country because mice are a bit of an issue up here. They're very sneaky up here. They can get into almost anything.
A lot of people will turn those HRVs off, and then they become a place for the hornets to live. Just inside the vent, they'll get in. And we had one. The one yesterday had a bunch of hornets, dead hornets.
Oh wow! I've never seen that. Wow. Well, the way I do it with my furnace schedule. Furnace filter, new filter, check the HRV. And sometimes it's just a matter of going in there. I've got like a little Dyson vac and just anything that's loose in there, just as opposed to washing everything out. But I do that like as need be with the filter. If it needs to be washed into the sink, it goes. If you don't know how to do it, go on YouTube. There'll be a video showing how you clean it. Everything's on YouTube. And it's the same with manuals. We just sold a cottage and Bill said, the manual's going to be there. I said, yeah, but it's just Google it. Manual for Kenmore wash machine model 8900. And you'll find it. You put it on your phone. You have it forever.
Yeah, and you'll be able to read
much easier.
Yeah, a book that's been in the closet or in a drawer for 20 years.
Well, you can also search the text in it. So you're looking at something specific, like how do I change the clock? You just go clock and you find it, or in the manual, or you go to YouTube and do the video. How do you guys kind of work? I know how you work because one of you is an inside person, the other is an outside. But just take a minute, Sue. How do you work with your husband doing these home inspections? Like, what's your role? What's his role?
Well, generally I go inside the house and I inspect things like electrical outlets, make sure that the wiring's correct. I do windows. I just look for cracks. I look for damage. I go room by room. We have a set program that we follow, so we just follow down so that we don't miss anything. And then sometimes I have a moisture meter, so I go around and I check for moisture, especially in the below grade areas. Monitor for any type of mold buildup. And then Roly does the exterior, and we kind of get together at the end, and any issues I've noted, he'll tell me what's happening in the outside area there, because there may be a correlation, right? So, but basically I do inside. Most of the time it's warmer inside, and there's a whole lot less bugs inside.
Lot less bugs inside, damn right. You're smart with that. But yeah, and how long? Like we're gonna do one. We're just talking about. We're doing one. Actually, you're doing one tomorrow for camera, one for us on Friday. We're gonna boat out to a property and do one. And one of the things we always have difficulty with, sometimes with our clients is, why doesn't it just take half an hour? So explain that. Like, they're fairly comprehensive.
With the program, even dividing it up with two people, it still takes quite a while. And there are a lot of questions that people have. They want to be able to ask their questions, and that's fair. So while I'm working through my section, which if we're going to that cottage and we're going to do a septic inspection, we're going to start with that. The reason is we want to be able to watch the results. If there's a problem, I have the rest of the inspection time to be able to monitor that system as to whether or not it's draining properly, it's draining at all, and we can watch it. And people often don't understand how in depth that is. That alone sometimes can take us half an hour to dig and get into a tank so that we can do the test. And then we work our way around the outside of the building. So by the time I get to come in the house, I've been on the property sometimes an hour and a half.
Yeah, and it's often you're trying to find lids for septic beds, eh?
Yeah, I get pretty good. after 1,000 of them, I'm getting pretty good.
Yeah, I remember one place we did one on Georgian Bay, and I think we dug up. Well, it seemed like like gopher holes all through the yard, because it's not always where the paperwork says it is it?
No, it often isn't. And homeowners don't always know. A lot of homeowners, have owned a house or cottage for years and never pumped. So they were told it's out in the back, so it's out there somewhere. So I mean, I'm pretty good at guessing from what I can say. I'm actually certified as far as installing septics if I so chose to do so. Getting to the point now where I can look out and go, okay, where would I put that tank? I put it here, and that's kind of where you start. And most of the realtors are local realtors are pretty good at knowing whereabouts to look too. We have a steel probe that costs probably about $15, And then we have a $1,500 metal detector, and I use the probe all the time instead of the metal detector.
Well, I use a metal detector. I use a metal detector back a couple weeks ago. We sold a place, and it was a buried well. So the buyers wanted to know where the well was. I had an elderly client. She goes, "It's over there." Okay, so she says there's a stake there. So we got I think it was the septic report, which showed the well, and whoever installed the septic did a good job. So where the stake wasn't where it was. Where the drawing was kind of where it was, but it was buried 2 feet in the ground. The only way we found this thing was with a metal detector. I would have found it. It would have been like that gopher holes in the backyard trying to find it. And we're able to find it that way. And once we found it, we stopped digging because you could puncture the water line. You can electrocute yourself because that's 240, 20 amps going into those things. They'll give you a good charge. So we're able to find it. But yeah, things aren't always, once they're in the ground, it's like property stakes. Like they're hard to find. These things, you're trying to find a little inch bar on an acre of property. An acre of property is almost 45,000 square feet, and you're looking for a little inch piece. And people don't understand that, and they don't understand how septic beds work. We had somebody today, and they said that they wanted basically the tank sterilized. I called them up. No. Septic, not antiseptic. That's what breaks down. It's the little buggies, the little bacteria in there that break it down. No idea. I didn't know how that would work. So municipal water treatment works the same thing. They just use different technology, but it's basically the same thing. We should do a video sometime and tell people how it does. It really should. So, anyways, you got a good story.
Actually, you should actually do a video of the inspection of a septic system, and then you would be able to show people what's involved and what they should expect. I mean, you can get into
it's a good idea.
Examples and that, but that gets expensive. So the best thing you can do really is just a visual and a flow test. We had one yesterday. We didn't do a septic, but I saw their septic paperwork because it was in the little flyer that the real estate agent put out for that property. And I got looking at it, and it was marked, and it was beautiful drawing, but it had the property lines, and just to the other side of the property line was a little W, and that represented the well at 24.5 meters from the septic system, and another W down at the end of the property line representing that property's well at 25 meters. They were dug wells. That's only 80 feet. So the clearance on that is 100 feet. You have to be 100 feet away from any component of the septic system if you have a dug well. And this was a brand new septic system, brand new, 2021. And nobody caught this. It's fully inspected. The installer did it, and it was passed. Final inspection.
Oh, wow. 50 feet for drill, 100 feet for dug. I remember that forever.
Everybody should, yeah.
Wow.
What did they think? Maybe they thought it was a drill well. We don't know. But they're lucky that they actually saw the paperwork.
That's one of those things that could potentially be a problem down the road.
Yeah. Well, I hope they have a good treatment system on the water.
No,
that's, oh, man. Oh, well, thank God cholera and typhoid are problems like they used to be. So, wow. It's incredible.
Not only are they going to contaminate their own water, but they're going to contaminate their neighbors as well. That's going to end up being.
Well, thankfully, though, the new septic systems, like the last 20 years, 20 some odd years, work actually very, very well as long as you don't park on them, don't plant big trees on them, don't do dumb things and I think part of the problem is I think when installers come in, I don't think they explain anything to the people. It's like, well, this is what you need to do, because we see crap all the time. garden sheds on them, Japanese knotweed growing on them, which is the worst thing, or maple trees. And I just think there's kind of a disconnect there sometimes, like with a lot of things, and people just don't know what the hell to do with them.
People don't know that they have filters in the new systems. In 2008.
Oh, the filters, yeah.
And most people don't know that there's a filter there.
Never mind that it has to be cleaned on a regular basis.
Yeah. They say once a year for that. So.
And how many are cleaned once a year? None.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've seen them go 10 years. You know, the system was put in. Well, 2008. You know, if it was installed in 2008, that's more than 10 years. That's 14, 15 years on a septic filter, and it's never been cleaned. We see it.
Yeah.
And they will back up, and sometimes they overflow. We had one that popped the filter out, and the sewage came out around the filter, so it leaked. With the pressure was so great, it popped the filter right out.
You sold that house too. You sold.
Did I sell
one.
it? Yeah. Lucky me.
Good thing you got it.
Well, you know what? Well, if you ever want to get, the video, I can bring my phone. It does 4K video. I'll have to do a 4K video of the inside of a septic tank so people can see what's in there.
Can't see much. The biomass on the side of the tank is half an inch thick in most cases.
I know, but the smell, you couldn't get really the smell of it. One of my best stories is when my brother and I were young. I think one of the first time we went out drinking and came back with a hangover, my dad decided to replace the septic bed, and they had my brother and I basically take the tile to the ground and clean them all out. Not that we're going to reuse them or whatever, but just to kind of go, yeah, you guys are going to do that, then I'm going to do this. So the smell never really leaves you with those things. Yeah, so I don't think it's something you ever really get used to. It's pretty fresh. So anyway, how could we could talk on forever about home inspection conditions. We're not going to talk on forever though, because we'll want to bring you guys back at some point. People can find you easily on the internet. What's your website?
Clearviewhome.ca.
Okay, I'll put on the show notes. So we always put the link back to the website. We've worked together for I don't know how many years. 15, 20 years? It's got to be big close. Is it 12? Is it only 12? Oh, it was Terry before you guys, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Terry Timmons,
yeah. Terry Timmons. Terry was great too. So I'm going to say we'll see you sometime later. I'm going to see you on Friday actually, because we're all taking a boat ride on Friday. Yeah. It's not going to rain. I've already checked the weather forecast. We'll look fine. Might be a little chilly. I think they're calling for a high of 19 degrees, but that's fine. The water's a little cold this time of year. I usually put a jacket on anyway. So anyways, thank you so much for coming on, Roly, Sue. You guys are two of my favorite people. We worked so, back, years ago, we used to see each other all the time, but not as much now because Ben and Cameron do most of the buyers now, and I don't. So I don't think to see you guys as much. But anyways, we'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thanks for your patience. Take care.
No problem.
Okay. Take care, Jim. Bye. Okay.